The world had always speculated about the possibility of alien life. Scientists debated, governments prepared secret contingency plans, and conspiracy theorists spun their wild tales. But when the invasion finally happened, nothing could prepare humanity for what came next. It started on a quiet evening. The skies over Earth shimmered as dozens, no, hundreds, of massive alien vessels descended to the atmosphere, blotting out the stars. They did not arrive with fanfare or flashing lights. They came as conquerors. The ships, sleek and metallic, hung ominously over major cities: New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, Tokyo, Karachi, and dozens more. People flooded the streets, staring up in awe and terror. Some prayed. Others reached for their phones, recording what would soon become the last moments of human dominion over Earth. Within minutes, every electronic device on the planet flickered and died. The power grids collapsed. Satellites in orbit were systematically shut down. The internet, communication lines, and military radars all went dark. Then a voice, cold, mechanical, and unnervingly calm, echoed across the world in every language. We are the VA Carry Dominion. Your existence is irrelevant. Your weapons are primitive. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender, and you may live. Resist, and you will be annihilated. Governments scrambled to respond. The United Nations convened an emergency meeting, though it was clear that no negotiation was possible. Within the first hour of the invasion, military bases in North America, Europe, and Asia reported the first sightings of the VA Carry ground forces. The invaders did not look human. They were tall, their bodies sleek and metallic, their faces featureless. Their movements were fluid but eerily unnatural, as if guided by some unseen force. They wielded weapons beyond human comprehension. Rifles that fired searing bolts of plasma, drones that could manipulate gravity, and shields that shimmered like liquid glass, absorbing all incoming fire. The first battle was not a battle. It was a massacre. In Washington, D.C., a division of the U.S. Army's armored forces engaged the invaders. Tanks rolled forward, their cannons booming, as they fired high-explosive shells at the enemy. But the shells disintegrated upon contact with the VA Carry shields. The infantry followed, rifles barking as they unloaded rounds into the alien troops. The bullets ricocheted harmlessly off their armor. Then the VA Carry retaliated. Their weapons cut through steel and flesh alike. Soldiers disintegrated in bursts of white-hot plasma. Tanks were lifted into the air and crushed like tin cans by invisible forces. Within 10 minutes, the battlefield was silent. Similar battles played out across the globe. In Moscow, fighter jets were swatted from the sky by energy pulses before they could even fire. In Beijing, missiles detonated midair, intercepted by unseen barriers. In Karachi, a squadron of commandos attempted a guerrilla assault, only for the VA Carry to detect their presence before they even struck. By the end of the first day, humanity had lost. The VA Carry commander, Admiral Koravan, addressed the world from a massive holographic projection that appeared in every major city. He stood tall, clad in a shimmering battlesuit, his expression unreadable. "You are an insignificant species," he declared. "Your technology is outdated. Your weapons are primitive trash. Accept your place beneath us, and you may serve. Resist, and you will be erased." Many governments collapsed immediately. Some leaders, fearing total extinction, surrendered without hesitation. Others, fueled by desperation, attempted last-ditch retaliatory strikes. None succeeded. In the days that followed, the VA Carry cemented their control. Their warships hovered over Earth's cities like watchful gods. Their soldiers patrolled the streets, enforcing their rule with brutal efficiency. Any attempt at resistance was crushed before it could begin. Hope was dying, but not everyone was ready to kneel. The birth of the resistance. Beneath the ruins of a destroyed military base in Virginia, a handful of survivors gathered in a dimly lit bunker. The air smelled of oil and sweat, the walls lined with crates of old, forgotten weapons. Colonel James Bulldog Carter sat at the center of the room, his rugged face illuminated by a flickering lamp. A veteran of countless battles, he had seen war in all its brutal forms, but never had he faced an enemy like this. Around him stood a ragtag group of soldiers, guerrilla fighters, and civilians who had refused to surrender. "We're losing," said a young resistance fighter, his voice trembling. "They wiped out everything. Our jets, our missiles, our best weapons. They didn't even slow them down." Carter said nothing at first. Instead, he reached down, running his calloused fingers over the cold steel of an old weapon resting on the table before him, an M2 Browning heavy machine gun. The gun was ancient by modern standards. It had seen battle since World War II, spitting lead in every major conflict of the last century. It was crude, simple, and brutally effective. "Maybe that's a problem," Carter muttered. The group turned to him. "They expect us to fight like they do," he continued. "High-tech weapons, energy-based systems, computerized warfare. But what if we hit them with something different? Something they've never encountered before?" A former Marine scoffed. "Sir, with all due respect, you saw what happened out there. Our weapons do nothing against their shields." "Not all weapons," Carter replied, a dangerous grin forming on his lips. He picked up a .50 caliber round from a nearby crate and held it up. "This ain't a missile. It ain't a laser. It's a chunk of metal traveling at nearly 3,000 feet per second. The VA carry shields are designed to stop energy-based attacks. But a bullet, a solid high-velocity round, that's just physics." The room fell silent as realization dawned on them. "You think we can punch through their armor?" one of the fighters asked. Carter smirked. "Only one way to find out." Over the next several days, the resistance scoured old military stockpiles, digging up every heavy-caliber weapon they could find. M2 Brownings, anti-tank rifles, even ancient Soviet DSHK machine guns, all relics of a bygone era, but now the only weapons that might stand a chance. Their first test came when a lone VA carry patrol wandered too close to their hideout. Carter and his team set up an ambush, positioning an M2 on a collapsed overpass. As the alien soldiers marched forward, oblivious of the threat, Carter took aim and squeezed the trigger. The Browning roared to life, its barrel flashing as it spat out .50 caliber rounds. The first shot struck a VA carry soldier in the chest. His shield flickered for a brief moment, then failed. The bullet punched through his armor, sending him crashing to the ground. The resistance fighters held their breath. Had they actually done it? The answer came as the remaining VA carry soldiers scrambled for cover, their flawless coordination breaking for the first time. They were confused. They had never faced an attack like this before. Carter grinned. "They think our weapons are primitive trash," he muttered, loading another belt into the gun. "Let's show them what trash can do." With that, the resistance had taken its first step toward turning the tide of war. The night air was thick with tension as the resistance fighters moved silently through the ruins of New York City. Fires still burned in the distance, casting an eerie glow over the skeletal remains of once great skyscrapers. The VA carry had turned the city into a military stronghold, their patrols sweeping through the streets with cold efficiency. Colonel James Bulldog Carter crouched behind a half-collapsed building, gripping the handles of the M2 Browning heavy machine gun that had become his most trusted weapon. Around him, his team of resistance fighters, soldiers, ex-cops, and even desperate civilians waited for his command. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and up against an enemy that had conquered countless worlds. But they had something the VA carry did not: the element of surprise and the sheer, raw power of ballistic weaponry. Carter peered through a pair of binoculars, spotting a VA carry checkpoint down the street. The alien soldiers stood tall and motionless, their reflective armor gleaming under the flickering streetlights. A hovering drone circled above them, scanning for threats. They believed themselves untouchable. That was about to change. He signaled to his team. Two snipers positioned themselves on a nearby rooftop, their Barrett .50 caliber rifles aimed at the enemy. Others gripped old but reliable assault rifles, shotguns, and heavy machine guns. What they lacked in futuristic technology, they made up for in sheer firepower. Carter exhaled slowly. Then, with a voice as steady as a seasoned warrior, he whispered into his radio, "Open fire." A deafening crack split the air as the first sniper fired. The .50 caliber round traveled at supersonic speed, slamming into the head of the nearest VA carry soldier. His armor, designed to withstand plasma and energy-based attacks, crumpled like tinfoil. Silver fluid burst from a wound as the alien collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. Panic rippled through the VA carry ranks. Their shields flickered on instinctively, but it was already too late. The resistance opened up with everything they had. Carter squeezed the trigger of the M2 Browning. The gun roared, its barrel flashing as it unleashed a storm of .50 caliber rounds. The bullets tore through the enemy ranks, punching through armor, shattering limbs, and rupturing their strange, silver-hued organs. The VA carry had never faced such a brutal, relentless attack before. A squad of them tried to regroup, raising their plasma rifles, but before they could fire, another volley from the Barrett snipers ripped through their chests. The VA carry weren't just being beaten. They were being slaughtered. One of the aliens, a squad leader, tried to activate a force field generator. Carter spotted him instantly and pivoted the M2, unloading a burst of rounds into the device. It exploded in a brilliant flash, sending the VA carry officer flying backward in pieces. The remaining VA carry turned and fled. Carter let out a breath. "Well, look at that," he muttered. "They bleed just like us." The resistance fighters cheered, but Carter held up a hand, silencing them. "We're not done. We need to hit them harder. This is just the beginning." The war spreads. Word of the successful ambush spread like wildfire. Across the world, scattered resistance groups began to replicate Carter's tactics. In the mountains of Afghanistan, fighters used outdated Soviet DSHK machine guns to ambush via carry convoys. In the dense jungles of South America, guerrilla fighters set up booby traps, using nothing more than repurposed landmines and old artillery shells. Even the remnants of the world's militaries took notice. The U.S. Army, though decimated, managed to rally troops in hidden bunkers. European special forces, long thought wiped out, re-emerged with stolen VA carry weapons, combining alien tech with human ingenuity. But the most devastating blow came from Russia. A group of resistance engineers had managed to salvage an ancient T-72 tank from a museum in St. Petersburg. The old war machine had been meant for display, its ammunition long since removed, until a retired tank commander named Viktor Ivanov and his team managed to retrofit it with live shells. Their target, a VA carry command post on the outskirts of Moscow. Under the cover of night, the T-72 rumbled to life, its thick armor shielding it from enemy fire. The VA carry, expecting an energy-based attack, were completely unprepared for the sheer kinetic force of a 125mm tank shell. The first shot obliterated an enemy hovercraft, sending flaming debris raining down. The second hit a guard tower, shattering it in an instant. The VA carry scrambled to respond, but their energy shields were useless against the raw, unrelenting power of high-explosive shells. By morning, the Russian resistance had taken back the city. For the first time, the VA carry realized they had underestimated their enemy. The Empire strikes back. The VA carry high command was in disarray. Reports flooded in. Human resistance groups were winning battles against their troops. Entire platoons had been wiped out by what should have been obsolete weapons. Admiral Koravan, his face twisted in rage, stood before the holographic projection of his war council. "How is this happening?" he demanded. "We have conquered worlds far more advanced than this backwater planet. Explain this." A lower-ranking officer, his metallic skin dented from battle, spoke hesitantly. "The humans, their weapons operate differently. Our shields are optimized for energy-based attacks. Their primitive ballistics bypass our defenses." Koravan slammed his fist against the table. "Then we adapt. Deploy the Scorched Sky Protocol. If these creatures refuse to surrender, we will burn their planet to ash." The council members hesitated. "Sir, the Scorched Sky Protocol will make Earth uninhabitable for centuries. Even if we win, the planet will be useless to us." Koravan's eyes burned with fury. "Then so be it. The final stand begins." The VA carry fleet repositioned itself in Earth's orbit, their ships preparing for planetary bombardment. Their goal was no longer conquest. It was extermination. On the ground, the resistance watched the skies, knowing what was coming. Carter stood atop a ruined skyscraper, his eyes fixed on the stars. Around him, fighters prepared their weapons, knowing this would be their last stand. A young soldier, barely out his teens, approached him. "Sir, do we even stand a chance?" Carter exhaled, gripping the handle of his M2 Browning. He looked down at the weapon, this relic from a bygone era, and then back at his soldiers, ordinary men and women who had refused to kneel. "If they want to burn us," he said, "we'll make damn sure they burn with us." The battle for Earth's survival was about to begin. The skies over Earth burned as the VA carry fleet initiated the Scorched Sky Protocol. Massive warships positioned themselves in low orbit, their weapons charging to unleash devastation upon the planet. The Resistance had won battles, but now the enemy was done playing games. This was extermination. Colonel James "Bulldog" Carter stood on the roof of a ruined skyscraper in the heart of New York City, his trusted M2 Browning heavy machine gun mounted beside him. Around him, hundreds of Resistance fighters prepared for their final stand. Some carried sniper rifles. Others held old rocket launchers scavenged from military stockpiles. Every last bullet, grenade, and shell had been counted and rationed. The radios crackled with reports from other Resistance cells. The Russians were fortifying Moscow. The Chinese Resistance had set up artillery in the mountains. In Pakistan, fighters had rigged the streets of Karachi with explosives, ready to turn the city into a death trap for the invaders. The world was uniting, not as separate nations, but as one desperate species. A deep, rumbling boom shook the ground. The first plasma bombardment struck the Earth's surface. The VA carry had begun their final assault. Hell unleashed. The first wave of VA carry troops descended from their ships in shimmering dropships. Their advanced scanners could detect electronic signals, energy sources, and even heat signatures. But what they couldn't anticipate was human ingenuity. As soon as the first dropship landed in the ruined streets of New York, it triggered a massive chain reaction of IEDs hidden beneath the rubble. The explosion engulfed the area, shredding the VA carry forces before they could even deploy. The second wave landed more carefully, using their energy shields for cover. But Carter had been waiting for them. "Light, EM up," he roared. The M2 Browning thundered, spitting .50 caliber rounds into the enemy ranks. The VA carry shields, designed to counter energy-based attacks, flickered uselessly as high-velocity bullets punched through their armor. Limbs tore off, silver blood splattered across the ruins, and the once feared conquerors were forced into retreat. Snipers positioned on rooftops picked off the officers, while RPGs fired from alleyways turned their hovercrafts into flaming wrecks. The VA carry had underestimated Earth's primitive weapons, and now they were paying the price in blood. Despite the Resistance's initial success, the VA carry were still relentless. Their reinforcements kept coming in wave after wave. Plasma bolts seared through the air, incinerating anyone caught in the open. The ground trembled as alien war machines, massive bipedal constructs armed with plasma cannons, advanced through the streets. Carter's forces were running out of time. The turning point. In the heart of Moscow, Russian engineers had been working on a desperate plan. Deep in an abandoned Soviet bunker, they had discovered an old but operational nuclear warhead, one of the last remaining weapons of its kind. It was their last resort. The message came through on Carter's radio. "We have the package. Targeting their command ship. Stand by." If the nuke could take out the VA carry flagship, the enemy's entire fleet might fall into disarray. But getting it, there was the real challenge. The warhead had to be launched manually from a pre-war missile silo, and it would take time to prepare. Time that Carter and the Resistance would have to buy with their lives. Carter turned to his fighters. "We hold the line, no matter what." The VA carry forces pushed harder, their war machines pressing into the city. One by one, Resistance fighters fell. Explosions rocked the battlefield. Plasma scorched the buildings. Yet, despite everything, the humans fought on. Carter's gun overheated, the barrel glowing red. He ripped it off and slapped a new one into place. A VA carry officer tried to flank him, only to be cut down by a burst of machine gun fire. His soldiers fought like demons, their desperation fueling their rage. Then the sky lit up. From the depths of Russia, a missile launched into the heavens, its contrail cutting through the darkness like a blade. The VA carry fleet detected it immediately and scrambled to respond. But their defenses, designed to intercept high-energy projectiles, struggled against the raw, unrelenting speed of a ballistic missile. The nuke struck the VA Carry Command ship dead center. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, a blinding white explosion erupted in the sky, tearing the massive vessel apart in a burst of fire and radiation. The shock wave sent smaller ships spiraling out of control, their systems failing without central command. On the ground, the VA Carry forces faltered. Their once-coordinated attacks turned chaotic. Some units shut down entirely, their connection to the mothership severed. Others panicked, breaking formation. Carter saw the opportunity. Charge! With a battle cry that echoed through the city, the remaining resistance forces surged forward, overwhelming the disoriented Vicary. Machine guns ripped through the last of their warriors. Grenades and Molotov cocktails turned their vehicles into burning husks. In the span of minutes, the invaders went from conquerors to prey. The battle was over. The aftermath. As dawn broke, the surviving resistance fighters stood among the wreckage, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. The VA Carry had been defeated. Their ships, crippled and leaderless, retreated from Earth's atmosphere. The great galactic empire that had called Earth's weapons primitive trash had just been shattered by the very thing they had mocked. Carter stood atop the ruins, his M2 Browning still smoking. He looked around at the fighters who had survived, at the cities that had suffered, and at the sky that was finally free of enemy warships. A young soldier approached him, exhausted but triumphant. "Sir, we won." Carter nodded slowly. "Yeah, we did." But he knew this was only the beginning. The VA Carry were an empire that spanned countless worlds. They would not forget this humiliation. One day, they would return. But next time, Earth would be ready. And when that day came, Carter knew one thing for sure. They would never underestimate human firepower again.